Welcome back, everybody, to the Dallas Prospect. Today, we got good news. We are talking Mavericks, not just winning game five, but doing so in dominant fashion because, this series has to show us a little bit of everything, I suppose. Dallas takes a 123 to 93 victory in game five on the road. Now, we came into this game with all kinds of questions. How would this team respond? I was really curious to see how they were going to respond after. Look, you climb back from 31 points down to then take a lead in the final 2 minutes, 14 seconds of game four and then kind of collapse from there to lose that game. I really had questions about how they would respond because that's an emotionally draining experience coming back from that game and trying to put that behind you. On one hand, yes, that does maybe foster a belief that dude, it doesn't matter what the score is, we're always capable of coming back. It does. But it does also show that man, even after all of that, we still didn't have enough to put it away. So I was curious how they were going to respond. Now you do get this travel agency or whatever running a stupid game day troll campaign, joking about straight one-way flights basically from Dallas to Cancun, for a ticket deal. Even if the Clippers aren't involved in that, even if it's just a sponsor renting ad space on their digital billboard at their arena, maybe don't do that. Maybe don't poke the bear and talk about how you're about to end the other team's season because that probably isn't going to. You don't need to give motivation to these guys, especially when one of those guys is Luka Doncic. And Luka's knee was one of those questions, man. He has not been himself in this series. He looked straight up awful, I thought, in game four. And I really wanted to see how's he going to be. We saw a couple days ago at a practice the absurd amount of kinetic tape holding his leg together. The whole point of that, the whole idea behind that is that it helps drain what is it the lymphatic system or whatever. It basically helps the swelling reduce by draining all that excess buildup of blood and everything, and helping with the inflammation. That's the idea. It's a little bit of a mixed thing about if that works. A lot of, I've seen some medical professionals call it basically a placebo effect. Other people swear by it. I guess that's the case of most things these days. So I was curious how Luka was going to respond. Well, he looked like he did very well with that extra day of rest, and maybe the kinetic tape helped because Luka looked like Luka again. I know they told us game day that he'd been kind of dealing with a little bit of an illness over the past week. Maybe that explains a little bit of the conditioning issue that we were kind of starting to wonder about, but it doesn't change the fact that he's got a sprained knee and that he is in visible pain at times. But good googly moogly was this a vintage Luka Doncic performance, particularly a playoff Luka experience, particularly a playoff Luka versus the Clippers performance, because Luka was in his bag. 39 minutes, 35 points, 7 boards, 10 assists, 14 of 26 from the field. Still only 2 of 8 from 3, but they were his last 2 attempts, so I did at least appreciate that. And even a steal, 5 of 5 at the line too, a plus 28 for Luka. Here's what I loved about this game from Dallas. From the jump, they were playing with aggression. They were playing physical and fast, and they got going. Opened the game with a Kyrie bucket. Loved that. That's been one of those things that I've been frustrated by, is how long Kyrie is waiting at times to get going. Responded much, much better in this game. Opening bucket is Kyrie with the left hand off the glass. Loved it. And Dallas in this game is getting penetration into the paint. The offense is so strikingly different when Luka especially, but Luka or Kyrie, anybody can weave their way into the paint and then kick out to an open shooter. The ball movement is always better when you can do that. The spacing is better. Look, Dallas has been one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the playoffs this year, especially catch and shoot opportunities. So being able to create those optimal looks is the best thing you can do. Like, that's the only way you can kind of offset it, is get better quality looks where the defense is out of position and scrambling, trying to adjust. You get into the heart of the paint and then kick it out to an open shooter, good things usually will happen. And it still took time in this game. Dallas in the first quarter did not shoot the three well. I think they were like 1 of 9 or something in the opening frame. But the difference is, with that penetration, they were also getting alley-oop dunks. They were also getting drop-offs for easy buckets. Luka was going. He was very aggressive in the opening frame, getting himself established. And I know that's kind of Dallas's thing, is first quarter, let Luka feel the game out, and try to get going. And then ideally would hand off to Kyrie at some point. But man, Luka was going, hitting step back shots, hitting spinning, fading shots, getting into the paint at will. Dallas is converting those. And the Clippers actually hung with Dallas for a minute. Like, I think LA made 9 of its first 12 shots. But then we had the first of many droughts for LA. And it's that they were able to, even though LA was able to start hot alongside Dallas, once Dallas's defense really battened down on them, they were kind of without answers. Like, they started 9 of 12, and then they went like a 5-minute stretch with 0 field goals. I think they ended up missing like 17 out of their last 18 at one point, and they just completely shut down. Meanwhile, Dallas is swarming to the ball. Like, anything in the paint, you have Derrick Jones Jr. chase down blocks. Derrick Jones Jr., by the way, I'm going to get to the other unsung hero. I mean, I know at this point, if you watch the game and if you were on Mavs Twitter, but Derrick Jones Jr. was a monster in this game last night. And I said last game that I felt like he was huge. He has really turned into the biggest X factor. I know PJ got all the love, understandably so, for his game 2 performance, I think it was. Or no, it was game 3 for PJ. I understand that. But Derrick Jones Jr., the last 2 games, has really been deserving of so much. Like, Dallas has to figure out a way to keep him this offseason. You got to figure out a way to lock him up long term. He is too vital to this team. In 30 minutes, he had 12 points, 3 rebounds, and an assist. He was 5 of 7 from the field. Again, not just like plays where he's blocking Harden's 3 at the top of the key and then catching a outlet pass from Luka, taking one dribble and throwing it down in traffic, going the other way on the fast break. But you also have plays where he's swarming down, collapsing onto the ball help side, and swatting like Westbrook out of bounds. He had 3 blocks in the game, plus 20 overall. Just sensational defense. And the hustle, the flow, all of that was fantastic. Loved it, loved it, loved it. And you see, like, if this team is healthy and if they're playing with that intensity, how good they can be. Now, where things really got interesting for Dallas, I mentioned earlier their 3-point start was not so hot. Maxi mother effing Kleba came in and did work. I know Maxi catches a lot of flack. I know he does, and sometimes it's deserved. And I know, unfortunately, people were angry at him about how game 4 ended. He's not in charge of the lineup. He can't help that he's put in a situation that is not optimal for him. Kid tried a point of attack defender, and going a small ball 5 to close out that lineup or close out that game was a horrible mistake. Yeah, you can say that's in the moment, but I would say there's more than enough data and situational comparisons we can make to say that was not going to be optimal. You really needed Lively closing out that game. I'll get to that. But man, oh man, Maxi, when he can roll it back to like his Utah game, I want to say that was like game 3 2 years ago in that first round series. He had like 8 threes in that game, but here he goes 5 of 7 from 3. At one point, Maxi was like 4 of 5 from 3, and the rest of the team was like 0 for, and it was like 0 for 16 or something crazy. It was something wild like that. He ends up 5 of 7 on the day as well for 15 points in 19 minutes. Loved it. Absolutely great from Maxi. One thing, too, I don't think Dallas, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe TGK, I see you're in the comments. Maybe you know, but I don't think Dallas rolled with a small ball 5, Maxi at the 5 in this game. I think even with how they utilized him, they did a much better job of kind of sticking with that size that they had. And so it was a huge advantage for them there, building that up. All that said, even with LA having that drought in the first half, even with Dallas playing with their intensity and physicality, even with Luca getting the penetration of the paint, setting up lobs, setting up open threes that eventually started to splash, you still only had a 10-point edge in at half. And so I was a little bit curious to see what we were going to get in the third quarter. And man, it just got better and better for Dallas because Luka continued to pick them apart. The Clippers went through another vicious drought. And aside from Paul George hitting a couple threes in like the last minute to make it halfway respectable, Dallas ballooned their lead to like what was it, 21 points or something like that going into the final quarter. I mean, just absolutely cooking LA. And I love that you cap that off too with like Josh Green, who literally like a play or two before hit the side of the damn backboard on a corner three. Just unbelievably cringeworthy miss. And then comes back and hits an and 1-3, not at the buzzer, but like essentially at the buzzer for Dallas, makes the free throw. And so it just completely took the wind out of LA's sails. And it never really was a game again. Like I know LA held on to their starters until like the 5 or so minute mark, but it was done essentially. They had no answers. LA had no answers for what Dallas was doing. That third quarter was absolutely disastrous for them. And the thing about that too is like they still had 23 points in that frame. LA's quarters were 24 points, 22 points, 23 points, 24 points. Incredibly balanced. The thing is, they had these long, brutal droughts where they just could get nothing going. Because then in the third quarter, they had another extended drought that Dallas capitalized on. So Dallas, meanwhile, 25 points, 31, 33, 34. I mean, just playing with their food at that point. Looking through some of the box score here, I love the response from the role players. At this point, I'm kind of giving up on the notion that Dante Exum is going to be an X factor of any kind in this series. But I mentioned earlier, Luka 35, 7, and 10. Kyrie probably had the most impactful ho-hum 14-point game I've ever seen. Like Kyrie did not shoot the ball well. He was 6 of 14, 1 of 7 from 3. But I felt like he played brilliant. I thought his defense was good. His hustle was good. I thought the way he was able to control the offense was good. He had several plays where he was able to create a fast break opportunity for the Mavericks going the other way. He had a couple steals and was converting them in transition for and ones. Kyrie never draws fouls. So getting those opportunities was huge. So I loved Kyrie's effort. I also specifically loved that both him and Luka were sub 40 minutes. I thought that was tremendous for Dallas because they've had to play both of those guys like 45 minutes, it seems like, every single game. PJ Washington, not a great offensive game from him. 30 minutes, 2 points, 5 boards. He was 1 of 7 from the field, even 0 of 2 at the line. But with his defense, he is a plus 13 still. So PJ does what PJ does. The rebounding numbers weren't even significant in this game. Like they were okay. But the defense and the hustle was there. So I love that. I already talked about Derrick Jones. This was another good game from Gafford. I felt like game 3 was the first time he really showed up. Game 4, again, I think they would have been better suited with him or Lively in that closing lineup rather than Maxey. But even still, it was kind of a ho-hum game for him. Gafford in this game, again, 19 minutes, 8 points, 5 boards, 2 of 4 from the line, or 2 of 4 from the field, 4 of 6 the line. And I love the physicality he's playing with. You see him like really doing a better job holding his position and not giving up ground to Zubac when he tries to back him down. Now, Zubac is a very talented low post player, so he's still winning plenty of those battles, but Gafford's battling better, I feel like, than he did early in this series. And the best play for me that showed me that Gafford was feeling good was that inbound play where Dallas nearly gets a 5-second inbound violation. And they get it to Gafford at the top of the key. And because Westbrook, I think it was, sold out trying to get the steal, Gafford just takes one dribble, strides down the paint, and like finger rolls it in. I'm like, that is a very confident play. When he's feeling good, when he's moving good, again, he's had ankle and back issues in this series. When he's feeling good and moving good, you get those kind of plays from Gafford. And those are just like you can't replicate that essentially. Like that's not something that it's hard to quantify, but like the confidence it builds in him and that kind of X factor that you have that your five, especially the style of five he is, can take the ball off the dribble like that and go straight line to the basket and convert it is just so valuable to your team. I felt like so loved that from him. I would be remiss, however, if we didn't talk a little bit about Derek Lively. Derek Lively, game one, the stage looked a little big for him. Game two, a little better. Game three coming around again. Game four, I thought he was great. He was really solid in game three. Actually, I should give him more credit for game three. Game four was also good. I felt like he would have been the guy you should have closed with at the five because Harden was getting blow-bys anyway. He hit 6 floaters in that fourth quarter alone of game four, and so including 3 in a row down the stretch that iced the game. And because you were getting blow-bys and beat at the point of attack anyway, Maxi's not going to be able to elevate to challenge that. And Luka in his foul trouble situation wasn't going to be able to challenge that either. So you had to have a backline defender with a serious vertical, serious height and length, arm stretch, all that, to if not block shots, at least alter them, at least bother them. Because Harden was just getting uncontested practice floaters basically in the biggest moment of that game. And that's what sank you. So how we let that happen 3 times in a row and still stayed with the small ball 5, Maxi at the 5 specifically, I don't really know. I don't really understand that, but it is what it is. Lively in this game, 25 minutes, 12.7 boards, even had an assist. He was 5 of 5 from the field, 2 of 2 at the line. Had a block. I'm surprised it was only 1. I guess I'm thinking of so many other times where he just bothered shots and altered shots because it felt like he did more. But he's a plus freaking 24 off the bench for the Mavericks. Derek Lively is playing fantastic. Like, I know when Gafford came in, Gafford made his very deserved and understanding statement for him being the starting center, and I'm fine with that right now. But I think Lively's ceiling is so special and high for especially his type of player. You know, a center, if he adds any kind of 3-point game down the road, corner threes, spot up threes, you know, whatever, then yeah, he'll be right at home in today's NBA. But for his style of play right now, not having that outside game, just what he's able to bring to this team, what he's able to bring in the way of athleticism and rebounding and defense, his instincts, his passing, all of that is so good for a rookie. And I could not be happier with his first season that we've seen. Again, Maxi, I already mentioned him. I could mention Jaden Hardy. Jaden Hardy had 14 points in those final 5 minutes. Actually, he played 6 minutes. He played 6 minutes and he had 14 points, 5 of 8 from the field. We know Jaden Hardy's not afraid to get some shots up, and he was hitting. So it's good to see a Hardy party. I would like to see him get some more minutes when the game's not in garbage time like that. But even still, a good performance from him in his action. Josh Green, I felt like also did some good stuff as well. Yeah, he had the 4-point play, which is all of his points there at the end of the third quarter. But I thought he played with good energy and defense as well. So pretty much rounds that out for that. But I mentioned how Dallas's defense really put the clamps down on LA. LA shot 38% from the field. Just a phenomenal drop off from what we saw last game. And you know what? The same thing was true in game 2. Game 1, the Clippers were scorching, near perfect offensive performance. Game 2, they dropped off hard. And I said, like, I know what their team 3-point shooting percentage was in the regular season, about 40%. But I felt that there was going to be a good chance they struggled to replicate, I think it was like 60% from 3 in that first game. And they did. They dropped off hard in game 2. Dallas capitalized, stole a game on the road. Well, then game 4 was scorching again for LA. And Dallas still should have won that game. They didn't, but they should have. Doesn't matter. You play with the reality you're given. So even with that, it was like, okay, is LA going to be able to replicate that? No. They once again dropped off 38% from the field, 26% from 3. Very similar to game 2, a significant drop off in their efficiency. And so Dallas has again been able to steal home court advantage here. because Dallas has a chance now to close out the series in Game 6 in Dallas. I would prefer not to go back to LA because even though LA's home crowd experience, their home court advantage is nothing compared to the Mavericks for what we saw in Game 4, that one specifically, I just don't see that as an optimal strategy to let this series drag out to 7 because anything can happen there. But LA shooting as poorly as they did, their superstars shooting as poorly as they did. James Harden, after being absolutely touted as some hero for them, some mythical figure, had a whopping 7 points, 7 assists, and 4 boards. He was 2 of 12 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3, and turned the ball over 4 times. That's a minus 25. I want to see here. There was an incredible stat I saw on Twitter. This is from, here it is, from Stat Mamba. James Harden has the most playoff games in NBA history shooting less than 20% from the field. We've talked about how Harden has had his struggles in the playoffs where he has disappeared and just failed to show up altogether. Straight up what happened there. After being the hero of Game 4, he drops off. Speaking of the hero of Game 4, Paul George, 33 minutes, 15 points, 11 boards, so a double-double, but 4 of 13 from the field, 2 of 6 from 3. Both of those came in the final minute of the third quarter. And also 3 turnovers, minus 16. Here's the thing, man. Paul George was sensational in Game 4, specifically the first half, when he could not miss. He had like 27 points at the half. And he basically did nothing the rest of the way. He had 1 transition bucket in the final 30 seconds or so of the third quarter. That was his only bucket of the third quarter. And then he basically had that game-winning 3. So credit where it's due. If you're going to make one, let that be the one. Game-winning 3 on an incredible play in the corner on Derrick Jones Jr. But that was what he did. He's not a guy. The Clippers, this is where them missing a healthy Kawhi is so huge. As they have these stretches in this game, and they had 2 stretches where they went like 5+ minutes without a field goal. At one point in this game, again, they missed 17 out of the 18 field goals. When you don't have that guy, things can get very difficult for you. Like, you can struggle to find a consistent rhythm and hang in there. Now, Paul George, he has a number 2 option. In flashes, he can play like a number 1. Really, the first half mostly of Game 4, and then coming through in that big moment for them in the closing moments. But that second half for him last game was really, really poor. Like, no impact. James Harden largely the same until the closing moment. So at least they got that. Credit where it's due. The Clippers have several guys who used to be that guy, but they're not anymore. I don't think Paul George was ever that guy. For Indiana, for a good team that was capable of being in the playoffs, yeah, he was for a bit. And he had that one year with OKC where he was third in MVP voting. That was another year where he was largely that guy. But then he came to LA and he's basically been, a good number 2 option. In flashes, he can play like a number 1, but really he's a number 2 option. James Harden's days as that guy are behind him. He can have flashes. He can have stretches where he takes over for a little bit and then he disappears. Look at Game 1 of the series, the first half. Had like 24 points in the first half. Largely nothing after that. He has stretches and flashes, and that's still dangerous. You still got to contend with that because obviously both of them have burned you, showing that they can still do that in key moments. But then you had these just stretches where nothing's there. Russell Westbrook, man, I don't know where he's at this point. This was another offer, I believe, for Russell Westbrook. And nah, not an offer. I wanted to say an offer because it felt so minimal. But in 16 minutes, he had 6 points, 5 boards, 2 of 11 from the field, 0 of 3 from 3. He was a minus 13. So Westbrook, I think he missed like his first like 8 shots or something. Like he got buckets, a couple garbage buckets late. And he's just not an impact right now for the Clippers. Like when you let him bother you and be a problem, that's when you're going to have a hard day at the office. But if you don't have Russell Westbrook being that energizer bunny for them, being that irritant you're letting get under your skin, then he's actually been detrimental to the Clippers, which kind of summarizes his last few years or whatever. So Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the rest of the Clippers box score here. This was the quietest Zubats game we've seen. 15.6 boards, 2 assists, 7 of 8 from the field. So like you see it like that, and you're like, oh dang. So if that's a bad game, that's still pretty solid. Not really, because defensively he was not helping them at all. He was a minus 18 overall. And I did feel like Terrence Mann had a good early stretch to that game. 11.7 boards from him, 5 of 10 from the field. Powell had 14 off the bench as well. Bones Highland, Bones Highland got them 11 points in 7 minutes as well. But for this game, to me, the difference was Dallas's defense was swarming. They were not giving up anything easy. They were playing with energy, intensity, pace. Luka was actually able to look like himself again, getting into the paint. That penetration was creating chaos, and the three-point shooting was slow, but it did come around, and Dallas was able to capitalize on it. Overall, the Mavericks were 54% from the field. They never really looked back. Even with the three-point shooting being slow at the beginning, they were converting at a high enough percentage elsewhere that it wasn't sinking them. The Clippers kept up for a minute, and then they fell off, and they never were able to match Dallas's energy. Even when their crowd was begging them to get into it. At the end of that third quarter, Paul George hits those 2 threes, and they're like, okay, maybe we got a little bit of hope. And then you get the Josh Green of all things and 1 3 in the corner. And it was just like, and that's it. We're back to like a 20-point game. So 38% from the field for the Clippers, 26% from three for them. They were 9 of 35 from three. Meanwhile, Dallas, despite starting very poorly from three, again, I think they missed like 9 of their first 10 or something, ended up 14 of 39 for 36 points. Free throws were basically even in terms of attempts, 21 for the Clippers, 20 for the Mavericks. The difference is the Clippers made 18 and the Mavericks made 15. So that's a little low percentage-wise, but you still were 75% there. Dallas held on to the ball. Only 8 turnovers for Dallas here. Their turnovers have been up and down in this series. Game 1, way too many. Game 2, still more than you want, but a little bit better. Game 3 did a good job with the ball. Game 4 is kind of an anomaly because you did have most of those turnovers when you were digging yourself that 31-point hole. And then as you climbed out of that hole, you're playing with such urgency and desperation. You're just trying to make something happen that you're climbing back into the game, but you're still being a little sloppy with the ball. And so they had too many turnovers in game 4 as well. And this game returned to form. 8 turnovers, very good job protecting the ball there. I also love that they won the assist battle 27-18, doing a good job again with that ball movement, sharing the ball. When the ball's not sticking and you're not just leaving it in one guy's hand for a difficult step back or one-on-one move, pull-up jumper, whatever, good things usually happen. And then in the blocks department, Dallas 6 blocks compared to 0 for the Clippers. I think that's the first game the Clippers got no blocks. But Dallas, the rim protection has been their greatest weapon in this series. Even in their 2 losses, the rim protection was solid for Dallas. I guess you could say game 1 a little iffy because Zubats just killed you, particularly Gafford in the low post, and Lively looked like the stage was a little big for him in that first taste of playoff action. So yeah, this is a very, very solid performance from the Mavericks here. Obviously, you win a game by like 30 points. You're going to feel pretty good with where everything is at. You still got some work ahead of you because things are not done. But when you're looking at this situation and you're up 21 points with like 9 minutes left in the game, and Harden and Paul George have combined to go 6 of 24 from the field, you're going to feel good. You're going to feel like some things are happening for you. And now you have a chance to close this out in game 6 at home. I did initially predict Mavericks in 6, so that is still in play. We will see. I'm really curious to see how Luka bounces back after this last game, because coming back, even if you have a breakthrough game like this, that knee is still going to have some wear and tear on it, right? Like, he's still playing with a sprained knee. And I don't care how much kinetic tape you use and how much stem and rehab and all that you do on it, you're going to be limited somewhat. So playing as well as he did, getting the penetration that he did, crossing over the way he did, pushing off of it, changing directions, all that. And the Clippers were trying to hunt him defensively, as you should. Um, there's going to be some soreness here for Luka. So I'm curious to see what version of Luka we get in game 6. If the illness thing he talked about the day of the game, like in shoot around, really was a big factor in this, then maybe there's still some reason for hope. If we get a performance still closer to what we just got in game 5, then that bodes well for Dallas. But if we get Luka like we saw in the first 4 games, really, then that's point of concern, especially if we're getting game 4 Luka, who looked just completely knee shot to hell and gassed on top of everything. Here's a record for Luka here. Luka set the record for most consecutive 20-point games on the road in the playoffs with 16 after notching a 27 point or after notching 27 points and counting through 3/4 of the night's play. So that's from Mavs PR on Twitter. So Luka now has the record for most consecutive 20-point games on the road in the playoffs. He at 16 now. He passed Michael Jordan for that record. Again, there are stats for everything, and you can contextualize anything to create a narrative and stuff. This is not one of those moments. Anytime you're doing something that has never been done before, anytime you're doing something where you're passing Michael Jordan on the list for a stat or a statistic or whatever, then you're doing some real shit. You're making a really impressive statement there. So love this for Luka. Great job for him. Here's the stat I was looking for earlier. Mavericks 3-point shooting. This was, I think, early 4th quarter when this was the case. Or no, it was mid 3rd quarter. The Mavericks shooting was 3-point shooting was Maxey and Derrick Jones Jr. were 7 of 11 between them, and everyone else was 0 of 16. Luka got a couple to go. I know Kyrie got one to go. But this was a really rough 3-point shooting day for everybody except those 2 key role players. So that was huge. Having a couple role players breaking through and playing up to the moment now is great. Derrick Jones Jr., like I said, he's been that dude for 2-3 games now, right there. PJ is still playing hard and with a lot of effort and energy. He's doing a great job, but he's not been the best defender and the best X factor. I feel like strongest X factor for the Mavericks in this series. I think that's been Derrick Jones. Lively, phenomenal. Gafford finding a little bit of footing, a little bit of confidence. That's huge too. And then you get a guy like Maxey popping up for a single game here. He was unsung hero in game 2 as well, but what he was able to do here, that is the difference. When you actually have role players who are stepping up, and it does not have to be all of them, but you get 2 or 3 guys, a couple consistent guys, and then maybe one guy crops up here and there that's like the surprise X factor. The Clippers, because of Maxey's struggles, and we've talked about this, not just in the series, but just in general, Maxey has not been a solid 3-point shooter for Dallas for a minute. They always talk about him like he is. Doris Burke always likes to tell us that he's a real 3-and-D weapon for them. But I'm like, Doris, you're checking old notes. You're looking like 2 or 3 years ago. He hasn't really been that guy in a while. But the defense can still be there in flashes. The effort and everything is always there. The athleticism has left him a little bit. Not that he ever had a ton to begin with, but he's still a solid, fundamental player who can bring you some of that. And then you add in that kind of 3-point shooting performance that will show its head once in a blue moon. And when he was like 4 of 5 to start from 3, and LA is just like, they're still not giving him respect. They're still leaving him wide open for these shots. That was everything. The Mavericks bench destroyed the Clippers in this game. Like the Clippers bench. It wasn't even a contest. The benches of these 2 teams were not even. The 4th quarter muddied it up because both teams scored a whole hell of a lot in the closing minutes. But man, oh man, it was a huge difference maker for Dallas. And I was sitting there when Maxey was 4 or 5 saying, like, you better get this one. You better win this game. Because as I said, like when I was talking about like a Tim Hardaway thing, which by the way, I'm surprised Hardaway's still not back and available. But when I was talking about like Tim Hardaway, I was like, if you're getting a good Tim Hardaway Jr. shooting night and he's actually bringing something real to the table, you gotta win those games. Those are unicorns when they're out there. If it's there, you don't miss that opportunity. Maxey shooting threes the way he did, that's one of those moments you got to take. You've got to do it. So, yeah, huge there for the Mavericks. I was trying to look as well. So here's the 3-point shooting for the Mavericks player by player. Luka was 2 of 8. Kyrie was 1 of 7. Derek Jones Jr. 2 of 4. Maxey, again, 5 of 7. Josh Green, 1 of 3. Now we're going to the bench players here, but Lawson, 1 of 2. And Hardy, 2 of 4. So, yeah, early on, it was really just Derek Jones Jr. and Maxey reining it down. I still love the fact, this is just a little aside, just my name being Derek. I love the fact that the Mavericks have not 1, but 2 Dereks. That brings a smile to my face. It's not a super common name. Let's see here. Checking through some of my notes. This is Kevin O'Connor on Twitter talking about the Clippers tonight. Bones Highland had 11 points in 7 minutes. Harden had 7 points in 33 minutes. And Westbrook had 6 in 16. Not going to act like that's their solution to play Bones, but the point is that your 2 of your 4 stars, I know there's only 3 of them available right now, just aren't there in this game, just aren't showing up. And it changes the complexion a little bit. Here's another thing from Mavs. Oh, nice. Salute to my fellow Derek. This is another Mavs PR thing here talking about Maxey's night. Maxey converted 5 of 7, which is 71.4% from 3 against the Clippers. The most 3-pointers he's made in a game this year. Nice. He improves his career 3-point percentage to 40.3%. I'm actually shocked it's that good. Oh, here's the stat I was looking for earlier. I mentioned. This is Josh Bowe. I don't know if Mavs Moneyball is still a thing. Maybe it is, but worked with him there. Great writer for them and podcaster. He said he wrote after Game 4 he didn't believe the Mavericks played Maxey at the 5. Oh, he wrote this after Game 4. Let me read his excerpt from Game 4. I didn't realize there was going to be so much work for me in just sharing his tweet here. He said, so here's the problem. The Mavericks score better with Kleba at the center, but the Clippers are figuring out things defensively against it, while the Mavericks defend better with Lively, but can't score. Will it be easier for Dallas to find points through play design when Lively mans the middle, or will the coaching staff still think it's easier to find better ways to get stops with Kleba at center? Those are the questions the Mavericks need to answer before Game 5 on Wednesday. So that's what he wrote after Game 4. I actually think that's a good, solid point. He said, after that, I don't believe that the Mavericks played Maxey at the 5 at all in Game 5, and Dallas shot 50% from the floor. So clearly they found ways to get around that to score with Lively at the 5. Nice. Let's see here. Anything else? This is from Mark Followell. Mavs held opponent under 38% twice in this playoff series. This is just the second time they've ever accomplished that. The other time was 2004, first round against Sacramento. That's amazing because you lost that 2004 series. Clippers shot 37 in 5 games, no less. So that's really impressive. Clippers shot 37.9% in Game 5 loss and 36.8% in Game 2 loss. I think he flipped those numbers, but you get the point. Really, really solid night here. Let me see. I'm just looking through. I'm about to dive into your questions. I'm just looking through this. I love this quote from Derek Jones Jr. after the game. He said, I was undrafted. I went into situations where I wasn't supposed to be on the roster or even playing. I fought my way into a roster spot, and I fought my way into the rotation. That's just him reflecting on his journey going from undrafted to a key role player in a major playoff team. Luka shared that tweet from the NBA just saying very, very underrated. I know a couple other guys chimed in as well. I don't think I got screenshots of those. I love this from Playoff Coops, again, sharing the same little excerpt there from NBA. He says, I would run through a brick wall, into a burning building, quicksand, a pile of snakes, a riptide, literally anything for this man. You can't teach this mindset. It's ingrained in the special ones. Yeah, like I said, you got to find a way to keep Derek Jones Jr. this offseason, whatever it takes. However you got to do it, you don't lose that dude. He's too vital at this point. From Nick Angstad on Twitter, he points out, here's the Clippers made threes by game in this series. Game 1, 18. Yeah, that's good. Game 2, 8. Game 3, 10. Game 4, 18. Game 5, 9. So even though the Mavericks won game 3, that was still a decent 3-point shooting performance for the Clippers, I guess. But game 4 and game 1, both those games they made 18. That is your real difference there. That's really the challenge in the series. Obviously, it's the both Clipper wins. But what frustrates me about that, man, you should have won game 4. And I made the argument. I thought you had a chance at game 1, had you made better situational rotations and strategy. Like, you cut that lead down to 15 with 8.5 minutes left. You were playing with the momentum on a real run, and then you made a bad rotation, and it just got away from you. Yo, Annie, what's good? You're in the UK right now. Nice. What time was the game? Were you able to watch the game last night? What time was it there when you watched? That's crazy. Let's see here. Let me roll through some of these comments here in the chat. Any questions, anything like that? We're just listing off famous Dereks now, aren't we? True story. My daughter's name is Harper, so I'm Derek and she's Harper. And the Mavericks legend Derek Harper calls games. That's just a coincidence, though. It has nothing to do with why the name was that. Also, I prefer my spelling, more original. Ivan says Luka is the MVP and he proves it by doing what he did whilst injured. I love your use of whilst. I've got just a little bit of that fancy bitch in me, so I want to say whilst and thus. I want to be fancy and dress up my language where I can. Let's see. Luka was great in game 4, 29, 10, and 10. He was awful in game where he had to play a ton of 3-point bricks and finished with only 22 points. Goodness. Thank God the Mavericks won game 3, he says. Derek Lively Jr. shutting him down, says Luka Skywalker. You, sir, are right. DGK said, I said DGG. DGG. DJJ. I can't read apparently today. Sort of inadvertently rhymed. Has been the player of the series. I agree with that. He's been the Mavericks' biggest X factor. Honestly, I felt like when I went with Exum, I was trying to think maybe a little too hard about it and go outside the box. But Derek Jones Jr. has been phenomenal. When we made the conference finals, the D was great, but looked like they pushed their limits. This squad looks like this is just what they do. I agree with that. That's a great point, Luka Skywalker. Mavs are better now than they've ever been in the Luka era. Still, I'm afraid of OKC, Minnesota, and Denver are way too good for Dallas. Still, if we pass the Clippers, yeah. Here's my thing, man. I feel OKC is gettable. Minnesota and Denver, that's another story. I do feel like they're a step above you. And I don't mean disrespect to OKC because I actually get a little bit irked when people disrespect OKC. When I say I think OKC is gettable, I don't mean that in a frauds, phonies. You'll take them in 5 if you get there or whatever. Nah, man, if you get OKC, I think if you win that series, it's a brutal 6-game series or it's a full 7. And maybe it's a little bit up and down where the games aren't all super close, but like it's this team made adjustments and then they did well. This team made adjustments and then they did well. Maybe it's that sort of thing where one team trades off after the other, kind of winning double-digit games. I don't know. The point is to say OKC is very balanced. They are, I think, one of the best 3-point shooting teams. They're very young, so energy and conditioning is good. They're going to be extremely well rested, which is also concerning to me. And you know, I don't put Shea Gilgeous-Alexander in the same conversation as Luka. I know they're both MVPs, and Shea's probably going to be either the MVP or the runner-up. But even still, I think Luka is better than him, pound for pound. You also got then Jalen is great for them as well. J-Dub, truly a very, very dangerous number 2 option there. Chet is a fascinating X factor for them as well. So there's a lot of things about OKC to look at and to kind of take into consideration, let alone Lou Dort. Lou Dort's defense, oh my goodness. I love me some Lou Dort. When there was conversation for a minute there about if OKC was going to be able to re-sign Lou Dort a year or so ago, I was like, oh my God, if they don't keep him, please, please, please let Dallas scoop him up because that dude's defense is just otherworldly. Lou Dort, the Dorture chamber. Oh my goodness, man, he will lock down your best guy and just give you hell. He completely shut down Ingram in that first round series. What up, Cowboys X Factor? All good, man. Ivan says we could still lose game 6 if it's a fluke like game 4. I'm still an optimist and we'll win the series though. Oh, dude, the Dorture Chamber. Yeah, that's OKC fan nickname for Lou Dort's defense, and it's actually a pretty great one. I actually like that nickname a lot. Game 6. Here's the thing, man. To me, game 4 wasn't a fluke. Like you could say, like them being that red hot, the Clippers was out of pocket, but I still look at that game overall and say, like, you should have won it, and you did show up and you did climb the mountain. It just came down to you making a very bad strategic decision with your rotation at the end, and maybe part of that is saying, like, oh, hindsight 2020. I don't even think it's that because I think it was more than anything just your poor decision there. We have enough evidence to look at and say that that was a huge factor. Kyrie didn't do much in the game, but he wasn't needed. I see. I disagree with that. His points weren't much, 14 and like 6 of 14 from the field, but and like 1 of 7 from 3, I think. But his energy, his defense, his hustle, I thought he did fantastic. I said earlier, I felt like he had the most impressive 14-point game I could remember. He didn't have to drop 40 points like he did in game 4. That was special. That was awesome. But he didn't have to. Part of that was Luka, so he didn't have to do as much heavy lifting. But what he did do, he did very well. And it just shows you can lead your team without having to score 30 points a game to be relevant. You can absolutely do it. I actually think Luka does more than he has to offensively. I think if Luka found a little bit of a better balance, and we're seeing it now this year. We're starting to. I know his points and everything were still astronomical this year, but I want his usage to dip. I don't want to keep burning Luka at the same usage rate because you're going to shorten his career a little bit, a la James Harden, when you do that. I would rather Luka's usage scale back just a little bit because the Mavericks get another solid scoring option 3. PJ is the closest thing to a big 3, third option we got, and he's not a big 3 type. I love PJ, but he's not a big 3 guy. So if you get that option, then hopefully you scale Luka back. You let him shift that a little bit of that focus to the defensive performance night after night, and you get a better overall Luka Doncic. I don't need him to score 34 points a game or average a near triple double. That's all awesome when it happens, but I'd rather preserve him and let him pick and choose his spots. That's the thing that, like, again, looking at the Clippers, Westbrook and Harden never did. And I think they both burned through their best years just completely using themselves up in the regular season. And then in the postseason, even though Westbrook alone never had that success. He never got out of the first round by himself. Harden had a couple of runs to, I think, the West Finals, but he himself was never sensational in a playoff run. It was usually the full team around him that did that. So I look at all that and say that I want Luka to have a little bit more help, not have to do as much offensively, and just let him pick and choose the moment. Be that assassin when the moment calls for it. Let him set the tone early. Let him pick and choose his spots, but I don't want to have to burn him up as much. And I think that'll blend very well, not just to regular season success, but especially postseason success as you get deeper into a run. Tomas, Luka MVP. Yes, sir. Yeah, no, I agree with that. Mavericks cannot afford in a game to fall behind like they did in games 1 or 4. Yes, 29 points and 31-point deficits respectively are very difficult to come out on the other side of. I agree with that. And in both those games, it was horribly stagnant offense, pitiful 3-point shooting, particularly, and just spotty defense as well. Both of those games as well, the Clippers started scorching hot, punched Dallas in the mouth, and I think Dallas went down, answered the 10 count in one of those games, and in the other one never really got all the way to their feet. MB says, if Luka continues to play with this intensity with the knee issue, I don't think we can reach the finals unless the team around goes off like Maxey, Derek Jones Jr., Lively, Gafford, Kleba. Yeah, and that's part of what I said. I'm curious to see how Luka's knee holds up and responds for game 6. Because, yes, game 5, he was sensational. Well, I'm going to drink my coffee because I realized it's still sitting here getting cold. Oh, that's Arctic. Yeah. But yeah, you got to get a little bit of rest for Luka. The penetration is great, and unfortunately, the offense needs it, and he creates it better than anybody because he has the size, the bulk to get into the paint at will. He's got the shiftiness to get in there. Kyrie's got the shiftiness, but he doesn't have the size to really make it difficult on a defense. But he finishes great in the paint. But Luka's able to kind of like weave into the paint, pick his spots, and just create that space for himself. Kyrie, he's slashing, he's, skimming around defenders, falling around, making incredible shots. He's one of the greatest high difficulty skill shot makers I've ever seen. Having said that, the way Luka's able to operate deep in the paint versus him is just a different thing. And so they're going to have Luka doing that sort of thing, unfortunately. Where I think you can still save him a little bit is I think you can save him a little bit by not having to run as much of the offense directly through him and let him play off the ball a little bit and then pick and choose those moments when to get into the paint and create those looks. Joe says, thanks for not BSing us that Maxey at small ball 5 is the right answer when kids rotations that game. The very next game, a blowout, reflected a lot of fans' concerns that Gafford and Lively always should play. Yeah, no, absolutely. And here's the thing, like, I'm critical of Kidd in a lot of ways. I came into the series saying Kidd was my biggest concern. In the series for the Mavericks was I didn't think he was going to give us the edge in the coaching battle. And that's something to keep an eye on. And so far, I feel like Kidd at his best has done well. And where he's been bad, he's been really bad. Like really bad rotational decisions, situational decisions as well, whether it was challenging a play or not challenging a play. My concerns with Kidd have largely remained the same, but he has had enough good moments that I can at least say, like, okay, he's not killing us, but he's at times certainly hurting us. But yes, I do think Maxey gets a little bit of unfair criticism at times. I understand his best days are behind him, and there are times when it's a legitimate criticism. But I also think like you can't ask a guy to succeed if you're putting him in a situation where he cannot succeed. If you're putting him in a no-win situation or a situation where he is at a disadvantage, as was the case with closing game 4, then that's just not fair to the guy. So I don't want Maxey catching that heat because that's not fair to him. He also had a couple big shots, I think, in game 4 down the stretch that I think it's unfair to act like, oh, he shouldn't have been out there at all. Like, no, he had some moments. It's just that he was in the very closing 2 minutes put in a really bad situation by his coach. That's just not fair to the player. So yeah, salute to Maxey, man. Like really, I want Maxey to get all the love and appreciation he deserves because I felt like he was an unsung hero in game 2, and I felt like he is a mammoth part of this win in game 5. Derek Jones Jr., Maxey, and Luka are my 3 star players of this game. And if I got to boil it down to that, seeing Luka jump back to MVP status, that's great. That's awesome. That's essential. But if I got to go for the biggest surprise to me, it's Maxey and his 3-pointers. Derek Jones Jr., I've already seen enough of what he's doing this series to be like, yes, this was at a heightened level that was so needed. But Maxey is the surprise factor that showed up and what I felt like gave a jump start to this team a little bit, especially from 3. Again, nobody was hitting from 3 before Maxey started reining them in. So Yeah, man, give Maxey his flowers. Like, it's okay to be critical of times when he's used and put in situations that aren't ideal, but give the dude his flowers when he shows up and does something special. Like, absolutely have to, I think. Always give love to the fellow Dereks out there. Well, you know what, Joe? It's not as common for me, damn it. And then we're listing off all these other Dereks. Yep, yep, yep. I'm not above making a silly joke and spotlighting it. Annie is in the UK for work. Nice, nice. Exum, he was really good for them in the regular season. I'm still holding out hope he can contribute to this playoff run, but Exum, of all my predictions I made before this series began, and so far most everything has held up to what I anticipated, other than losing 2 games without Kawhi. That wasn't expected. But I said 6. I predicted X factors, and I would say in game 1 and 4, Clipper wins. I feel like Russell was good for them. Actually, you know what? No, that was game 3. He was ejected. Um, a lot of my predictions have held up. The one that has not is I really thought Dante Exum was going to be significant in this series, and he just hasn't been. Whether in some games he's barely getting minutes, in games that he is getting minutes, he's not doing anything to slow down Harden or whoever he's being asked to guard. And the scoring is just not there either. What did he have this game? Because this was his best scoring game so far, I believe. He ended up with 4 points in 10 minutes. He ran the offense well. He hit a couple pull-up jumpers I liked. I appreciate that he's doing something there, but I was expecting Dante to be a 9, 10, 11 point per game guy with some timely defense, and I just haven't seen that. So that's something that is something that I had wrong in my prediction. Dang, Bulgaria 5 a.m. No, it's not 5 a.m. now. You're talking about something that was 5 a.m. The Maverick game? Yeah, yeah. And he was watching the game at 3 a.m. Sheesh. And you're in the UK for work? Good luck today with your day. Let's see. Ingram is a paper tiger. Oh, interesting, interesting. I think Ingram's a solid player. I just think he's not that guy. And that's where you get into like Zion's health thing, hampering them significantly. I think if a fully healthy Pelicans team was there, it would have been a 6-game series with OKC. But once you didn't have once you didn't have Zion and you had to rely on Ingram alone, not alone, but predominantly, I knew at that point it was going to be a sweep, or if OKC effed around too much, maybe a 5-game gentleman's sweep. I agree, Leonard. I don't like looking ahead. The only reason I was compelled to talk a little bit about it was because somebody mentioned being worried about OKC, thinking they were just a complete class above Dallas. I don't think they're a complete class, but I agree we need to handle our business and get out of this series, because the last time we got caught as a fan base, at least looking ahead, was after game 3. We started thinking like, oh man, maybe 5 games and then on to the next round. Don't do it. Don't do it. Clipper, anybody responds. You give somebody a reason to put a chip on their shoulder other than just their season feeling like it's hanging in the balance, they're going to respond. The Clippers came out through a haymaker in game 4, and you could have broken them by pulling off that comeback successfully, but you didn't. And so you kept that flame of hope alive for them. Now, hopefully, you've done a fair bit to dampen it, extinguish it maybe here, but now their season's on the line. They might not get another game at home. Obviously, you win this game, they won't get another home game. But you got to take care of your business. You got to bury them. Don't just, I don't mean just like figuratively. Well, I guess I do mean figuratively. I don't mean literally. I don't just mean in the way of like end it. I mean like bury them under a barrage of threes, a la Game 4 of the Mother's Day Massacre against the Lakers in 2011, where you just completely annihilate them from the jump. Don't even give them a chance to think that they're in this game. Bury them. Have that moment, that game where just everything clicks and you just bury them. If they thought game 5 was Dallas getting hot and burying them, no, no, no. Game 5 was the appetizer. You put their ass away in game 6 and don't even let this be a game. Let this be decided effectively at the half. That is what I want from Dallas. That is the response that I want because that tells me they're locked in. I felt like the team was a little bit complacent after game 3, thinking they had things in the bag. And even Jason Kidd was saying to the team and to the fans, we haven't done anything yet. Don't get ahead of yourselves. And you saw how the team responded to game 4, especially the first half at least. And it's like, yeah, that's a valid point. And I felt like Kidd even kind of felt that and felt the need to call that out. So even more so, show me as a team that you get it, you understand, and you're not going to let that happen again in this next game. That's the next step of maturity, I think, for the team. And you got the right guys in place to do it, I think. Getting caught up on the comments here. If we can get at least 5 minutes of Exum's playmaking and shooting we all love, we're winning this. I agree. Solid playoff rotation piece as a backup for. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think there's a place for Maxi. I think you just have to keep him in the right situations, and playing him at the 5 is just not going to be that. Small ball 5 is not going to help you here. And even if you think like, oh, well, that's giving us more offensive punch, bro, you needed a defensive punch to close out game 4. You had a 1-point lead with 2:14 left after scaling a 31-point deficit. The hell you thinking about offensive firepower for? Get your defense in there. Get Derek Lively in there. Get Gafford in there. I'll settle for Gafford. Lively would have been the better of the two because of his springiness. But good God, man, do something. They weren't going to go to Zubats in that situation. Yeah, they were going to go absolutely to Harden or to Paul George. No question. Maybe if they got creative, they would have looked to Norman Powell. But good Lord, man. Shout out in the Philippines. What's good, Raymond? I agree with the dude with the Ninja Turtles name. Joe, you're making me smile today. I love the humor. Similar wavelength, I feel. Yeah, the Cancun, the Dallas to Cancun travel thing, and the Clippers immediately came out and were like, we don't choose those ads or what directs them. Like a company paid for that ad spot. We have the utmost respect for our opponents, and everyone was just like, yeah, Mavs by 1 million. Yeah. I look, Dirk. I love Dirk's mentality from the title run where he'll just say like, dude, if you're looking for motivation, like again, when he was talking about that, he was talking about like in the finals. So it's a little different, but like the great players we know will create a chip on their shoulder. Michael Jordan, right? And I took that personally. Doesn't matter how small the slight was, or if it was even just a perceived slight. You find a way to make it personal to give you motivation. Russell Westbrook's great at that, also to a destructive tendency. So I don't know that it gave motivation to the Mavericks. Maybe they used it as fuel, but like I think they already were coming into this game ready to put to rest the ghosts of game 4 before they even had a chance to haunt them. Luka and the Bigs did a much better job of looking at the rim and trying to score in the paint. That was a huge difference. Kills me when the Bugs don't attack the 6'5" dude. Oh, Bigs don't attack the 6'5" guard at the rim. Yeah, no, I agree. And again, part of that I just feel better with them being more aggressive as well. Like the penetration creates better passing lanes for those alley oops. You got two great centers that can convert those, so that's huge. Um, but just handling your business, like you said, taking advantage of the opportunities that are there. Luka looked more comfortable and confident navigating the paint in Game 4 in particular. Luka looked like he was terrified of getting into the paint, and if he actually did get there, then he looked like he was terrified of any physicality there. And if the knee was really giving out and the body felt weak because he was ill or whatever, then there you go. Like that explains a lot. But if he is better, at least in terms of his illness now, and the body doesn't feel as weak, the knee is still a little bit timid. But if you're able to get into the paint, then you're able to convert a little better. This is one of those areas actually where Luka not being a super athletic player helps him. When you're an athletic player with a sprain or an injury, it's different because then a lot of your game is based on explosiveness. That's where you get like soft tissue injuries or worse, more catastrophic injuries because you're explosive. You're pushing off that leg. It's already weak, and you're just putting so much stress and strain on an already vulnerable body part. When you're based on just like, you know, agility, footwork, just being like a mathematician in terms of figuring out the angles, the trigonometry of it all in the paint, and creating those looks for yourself without having to really elevate or go over a dude like Luka does, then it's easier because yeah, you still got to get in the paint and jump, and there's still a risk there, but it's a much lower risk than if you're trying to sky over a dude, um, and just win through your force of physicality. And he says, hot take, if Tim Hardaway Jr. was shooting at the level he was at the beginning of the season, curtains for the rest of the league. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you get Hardaway shooting like he was early in the year, because he had a good start to the year. Like I know at the trade deadline, Derek Harper was, and he's always gonna toe the company kind of line and talk good about the guys that are there for sure. But he was saying like, why would you talk about trading a guy who's having like one of the best years of his career? It's because we know it doesn't last, Harp. We've seen it. We know this story. So yes, if you have Tim Hardaway Jr. shooting like he did at the beginning of the year on this team, Dallas is nigh unbeatable. And LeBron talked about that even on his podcast with JJ Redick. Like, you got Luka and Kyrie, and then if you got Tim Hardaway Jr. hitting threes, like it's over. Like it's game over. You can't do anything at that point. The problem is those Hardaway hot streaks don't usually last very long, and they're very cold, long droughts in between them. It's like waiting through the ice age for the next. I was taking this analogy somewhere, waiting through the ice age for global warming or something. I don't know, climate change to turn up the temperature and get things going again. But I don't know, man. If you got it, it's great. But as somebody else already pointed out, Joe, yeah, it's a big if for sure. So anyway, I'm about wrapped up on time here. If you guys got a quick question you want to hit me with real quick, I got just a couple minutes, but I got to wrap this up. I got some work I got to do today. Didn't have time to do my full setup, filming it like I did the first couple of games. That just takes a lot of time to stage that setup in my dining area, and then editing it and all that. So I was just like, I'll just do a live stream. We'll just have a discussion today instead of me trying to dress it all up and be fancy. But yeah, I'll be very curious to see how the team responds. This is a great, great win for the Mavericks. I love the response from the team. And now I'm just going to be curious to see how Luka's knee does moving forward and how these role players who have started to emerge can follow up. I don't expect Maxey to hit like he did last night again. If he does, oh my God. But I don't expect it to happen. Derek Jones Jr., I think that could happen. Dante, please step up. Would Dante Exum from the regular season please step up? Josh Green, I'll settle for a Josh Green moment where he hits a couple threes. I'll take that. All right, I got two more questions that I'm closing out here with. Cowboy X Factor, DDP, is Hardy going off in garbage time a good sign in terms of being able to contribute going forward? I would love, especially with some of these games where we've just been frigid from the three-point shooting perspective, I would love to see Hardy get more opportunity, not just in garbage time. I would very, very much like to see that. Um, but I don't know that it's going to be there yet. He's not a great defender, and the inexperience, largely because I don't think he got enough minutes during the regular season, I think will probably limit his opportunities unless Kid is just desperate and looking for something that could maybe spark the team. I think he could give you what you get in Hardaway, even when Hardaway is doing pretty well or even cooking. But I don't know. I hope it gets him some opportunity. I just don't know what it'll be yet. I don't know if it's going to be like an instant, like, you know what? I think I'm going to utilize him maybe 10 minutes during the bulk of the game rather than garbage time in game 6. I don't know that Kid's thinking that way. Kid seems like he's slow at times to react to these sorts of things. And Leonardo, what would you think of Lively starting in game 6? I don't want Lively starting in game 6. And it's not that I'm just saying like, oh no, you don't change what's working. No, I don't think it's that at all. I think of it as I would prefer to keep the balance we have. Lively, even though he's a backup center, has been such a spark plug for this team coming off the bench. His minutes are already about 50-50 with Daniel Gafford, although I think, as we saw in this last game, he had 25 minutes compared to 19 for Gafford. I think that's about the right balance, but I like Gafford being the first wave out there because I don't want Lively getting into foul trouble early. I think part of what Lively's best performances in this first series have been when he's been able to come in off the bench and avoid immediate foul trouble. That game 4, he did, I think, get in early foul trouble a little bit. So I want Gafford out there. And even if Gafford's not the better of the two in terms of his impact on the series right now, I want Gafford out there early on. One, because if you get Gafford going early a little bit, that's going to help him. You're going to see the confidence, like he takes that ball off the dribble from the top of the key and finger rolls it through traffic. Brilliant. Love it. Also, I think you protect Lively a little bit by not having him out there when the Clippers are going to first start out trying to establish the interior, getting the points in the paint. They like to go through Zubats early to try and get something going there. And then letting him come in off the bench, be that change of pace, avoid that early foul trouble, I think is just huge for him and his confidence. So I would keep him where he's at. But yes, thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll see game 6. Let's see. Game 6 is going to be tomorrow night, 8:30. Damn it. I was hoping since it's in Dallas, it wouldn't be such a late start time. I know I sound like sour grapes for sour grapes for the fans watching overseas. I get it. I understand first world problems. That sounds like an offensive term somehow. Whatever. Yeah, we'll see how this goes. Hopefully Dallas takes care of business and closes this out. But don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the Dallas Prospect, and until next time, guys, remember, every legend was once a prospect. Peace.